And when we're not hustling, we believe that seeing sex workers as full people outside of our work is an essential step toward humanizing and destigmatizing the industry and those who work within it. Help us to bring you the stories of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is a 501c3 fiscally sponsored nonprofit project of the Social Good Fund. Thank you for considering a tax-deductible recurring contribution. All contributions will be received through our fiscal sponsor, the Social Good Fund. You can contribute at nothustling.com.
Put away the lingerie. I wanna know you. Tell me more. I don't care about the hear about you and see the world from your point of view. The coffee's already made, so I'll part the shades, just pull up a chair and tell me more.
Welcome to When We're Not Hustling, a podcast where sex workers talk about everything but. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. When We're Not Hustling is a weekly podcast that explores the lives and identities of sex workers outside of our work personas, our personal philosophies, ambitions, families, relationships, passions, spirituality, and so much more. We talk about our lives beyond the job, asking, what does the flexibility of sex work allow us to do, and who does it allow us to be? On our show, we learn who sex workers are outside of the work we're known for. When We're Not Hustling is an exploration of the people behind the fantasies. When We're Not Hustling is brought to you by Assembly 4. Assembly 4 is a collective of sex workers and technologists working to bring the overall cost of sex work down through their advertising platform Tryst.link. They also educate clients through the Good Client Guide and provide resources and articles written by and for sex workers. Assembly 4 caters to all genders and demographics and raises funds to fight for sex worker rights and against exploitation in the industry. Learn more about Assembly 4 at assemblyfour.com.
Hello and welcome to another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your producer, Emily Foster. I'm obviously not Jessie Sage, although I wish I was. I'll be filling in for her for a little while she works on some very exciting new hustles. Currently, she's working on her contribution to I Hate My Job, which is a new compilation of essays from current and former sex workers exploring the intersection of labor, sex work, and capitalism. It's being released from Working Girls Press after being fully funded through the Kickstarter that finished just this January. It'll be released this November, so look forward to that and some exciting new book launch events. Jessie is also working on her new book and a TEDx Talk, which will be coming up soon. We'll share more about those projects as they get closer. As always, Jessie is hustling, even when she's not hustling. This week, she interviewed another incredible woman who has a badass side hustle, professional wrestling. Jessie and Katarina get to talk about the sex industry, safety for sex workers, what it's like to be a pro dom, and the ins and outs of being a heel in professional wrestling. Katarina, the Domme Kat Pierce, is a New York City-based fetish wrestler, pro dom, adult actress and producer, kink educator, and experience creator. With Tiana, Glittersaurus Rex, and Dr. Ash Dark, Kat co-founded Sex Work Survival Guide, a nonprofit dedicated to the idea that life-saving information shouldn't be gatekept because survival shouldn't be a luxury. Katarina comes from the world of TV production and print journalism, and when she's at home editing content and her mom calls to ask what she's doing, Kat says, "I'm using my college degree." Without further ado, let's get right to the interview.
Hello, Kat. It's nice to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we met in person at a Friendsgiving up in Brooklyn, and it was very nice.
It was very nice. I love their house. I love them. It was such a nice gathering, and everybody brought such good food.
The food, I won't tell my in-laws this, but the Thanksgiving was much better than the one I had at home.
It was delicious. And
So
it
good.
was actually at the house of one of our former guests, Chloe Nova. She has been on the show before. And Reese Piper, her roommate, is a very good friend of mine and has been on my other shows. And I'm just looking for an excuse to bring her back here, which shouldn't be that hard.
Shouldn't be that hard. They're amazing people. They are both amazing people.
Yeah, yeah. So are you New York based?
I am. I'm in Brooklyn too.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
Tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
My name is Katarina. I go by the Domme Kat on the mats, but I'm Katarina Pierce. I'm a pro dom, a fetish wrestler, a kink educator, an adult actress producer, an experience creator, event producer, and I'm one of the co-founders of Sex Work Survival Guide, which is a nonprofit that provides free education to sex workers and their allies because survival should not be a luxury.
That's amazing. Let's talk a little bit about that before we dive into the meat of the interview, because I'd love to hear more about that. And I'm sure our listeners would like to know about that resource too.
Yeah. So the way it came about was, I'm sitting on mountains of privilege. And when I first got into this industry, despite, my contacts as, from my previous life as a journalist, getting the information that I needed to do well, but also be safe was difficult. It's their censorship keeps us from, having access to it, not having access because of criminalization, and money.
Yeah.
Money. A lot of us, especially doms, we're always like, here's my $100 bills. Look at this. I got all this money. Get into sex work because we need money. Like we're
right. It's a lot of smoke and mirrors.
No, I mean, the clients are watching. No, I am Scrooge McDucking in dollar bills every night. But let's get real.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's difficult to get access to those kinds of things, and the learning curve in our industry can be pretty steep.
Yeah.
It can be death, injury, it can be arrest. And that's kind of like a crazy learning curve.
Yeah.
So I just thought, how do we get this information to people? How do we get just the basic stuff? And I brought it to my friend Tiana Glitosaurus Rex, and I was like, hey.
What a name.
I know, right? Yeah, she's amazing. And I was like, hey, this might just be me like on Jitsi or Zoom, like in my living room, by myself. And it ended up being a 2-day conference sponsored by Pornhub. We had 3,000 people come through for the weekend. We had panels and keynote speakers, and we had everything from internet safety, Bitcoin, in-person safety, anti-racism in porn, racist SEO terms, building community, burnout, family law when you're trying, and, you have kids, all sorts of different, badges we had. It was like the Boy Scouts. We had badges.
I mean, there's badges on Pornhub too, right? So that makes sense.
It's kind of in line.
Yeah.
But yeah, so since then we've done another conference. We actually did 2 more conferences. One was in person.
When was the first one, Kat?
2021, January 2021.
Okay.
Yeah. It's on our YouTube, along with, we do speaker series during the year. So it kind of keeps the spirit of the conferences going. And, so we have on our YouTube channel, we have production tips. We have, how to maximize your streams of income, taxes.
That is so great. So what is the YouTube channel?
It's at SW Survival Guide. That's
nice.
It.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are the conferences now, are they in person or are they online?
The last one was in person. It was a hybrid. So we did online and in person, but the first 2 were online, and all the speaker series are online. And actually Chloe, my tongue-tied. Actually Chloe Nova, volunteers with us, as does Molly B. Simmons.
Nice. And Molly is also a friend of our show.
Yes, she is.
Wow. That's really neat. So when is your next one?
The conference, we're going to put a pause on them till we see what's going on this year.
Okay.
Because we are putting sex workers promoting them and putting their face on camera if they so choose. So we're just doing some like speaker series this year.
Okay, nice. Okay, cool. So what's the next thing you all have coming up?
Well, we're talking about, we're in talks with a speaker about experiences as an elder transgender person who has rival sex work pretty much their entire life.
Yeah.
So we'll see, when that one happens, but
yeah, it's so interesting. So one of the conversations that keeps coming up over and over again in this show, and I hear this coming out of what you're talking about, is how varied the experiences that different sex workers are having. And so it's so important, I think, to bring together, when you're doing something like that, all these different voices of, like, obviously a elder trans sex worker is having very different experiences than, a white cis woman who's doing mostly indoor work, and so I think it's really, really helpful to have a lot of that.
Yeah, it is. And, it's always kind of like, we're trying to balance giving people what they need based on our experiences, but also trying to hear from the community what they need, and getting the information to not just online sex workers, but like, how do we get this to in-person sex workers?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's really interesting. I really appreciate that work because that's obviously so needed. I feel like I was very lucky because I started as an online sex worker and the stakes there are a little lower. I mean, there's obviously like a ton of risk where you're like of exposure and stalking and that kind of stuff, but it's not the same as like doing in-person work. And so by the time I transitioned into that, I had enough of a network of sex workers who were like giving me the tools and like helping me learn how to screen people and what the safety protocols are and where blacklists were. And it like, I felt way more comfortable going into work knowing that I had that kind of infrastructure. And I feel like I hear a lot of young people come in who just kind of enter without any of that. And that's so scary because the stakes are so high.
They really are. And, that's amazing that you had that support system. Yeah. That's so important because, and also like as sex workers, we're busy. We're always on the hustle. We're, we're not hustling. Like, I'm not hustling. I'm sleeping. I don't know. It's our time is a precious commodity. Yeah. When we're able to give that to other sex workers and to people entering the industry, that's just
it's so funny that you say that. And I think it's so important because when we first started this show, Emily, the producer that you just met, and I were thinking of concepts and we were kind of asking people within the community, like, what do you think about this? And the number one piece of negative feedback that, not negative, but like, I'm not sure about this, that we got was, what do you mean? I'm always hustling. And I was like, me too. And that is my like interest in this show is like, I want to know what else there is to do because all I ever do is work. But then I turned that like interest into a job, which is now hosting this podcast. And I'm like, this seems to be a sex worker problem is that we're like, I would like to knit. Well, how can I turn this into a job? Like, because we have this mentality of like, always hustling.
Yes. And I mean, we're all trying to survive under late stage capitalism, fetishism. So, we're all doing our best. I actually had somebody slide into my messages on FetLife, which is already like, but they slid into my messages and they started telling me their daughter's views on sex workers, which were not favorable. And I was like, tap on the keyboard, trying to explain to him, like, this is, unfortunately, we have had to commodify our hobbies, listening to all your, like, previous guests who are amazing and incredible. I'm like, what have I done? I just finished a book. Okay, I did a book. Like, just like.
You do a lot of things. All of us. The thing is, all of us do a lot of things.
We do. We don't realize how many tentacles we have out there in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I forget that, and sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm not doing anything, and then I'm like, look, stop that. It's ridiculous.
It's so hard because we have been raised to believe that our worth as a person is tied to our productivity.
Right.
And a lot of us in this industry are, somehow, we fell into this because we needed to, whether like the schedule is great. I'm a natural night owl,
Yeah.
Some of us are neurodivergent. Some of us are
some like almost everybody.
Everybody, I know. Like 10 sex workers, and there'll be one who doesn't have ADHD.
I know. And if you're a sex worker and you think you're neurotypical, I would reconsider.
Yeah, you need to take a quiz. Yeah.
I mean, there might be one.
There might be one. I don't think I've met them.
I don't think that this job is like, you have to be a little bit outside of things already to do it, I think.
Yeah.
And you know who taught me that is Reese. Like, she was the first person, I think. I interviewed her for my column many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, in a different iteration of my weekly column. And she was like, I think that my autism helped me to be a stripper because, like, all of those, like, first of all, she talks a lot about, and for those of you who don't know who I'm talking about, Reese Piper is a autistic stripper who's written a lot on the intersection of stripping and autism. And one of the things that she said was, we're already standing outside of the mainstream and we already don't have the same relationship to our bodies and to sexuality and to norms. And I was like, you know what? That's true. It's less of a hurdle to get into it when you're not making the same associations as everybody else is.
Yeah, that's very true. And it requires like a certain finesse and a certain, nuance and creativity.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sexting with people about how I give them a tiny pill and they shrink, and then I put them in the hospital. Like it's there's so much creativity involved.
Yeah.
But like props to, oh my gosh, strippers. I don't know, man. That is,
I could not be a stripper.
Neat thinking. That's
Speaking of hustles, I just am not equipped to like go out on the floor and hustle like that. Like, I just can't. I don't have it in me.
That is amazing. Like the way I was thinking about that the other day, like how difficult, how much upper body strength, how much stamina, all this kind of the physicality of it.
Oh yeah.
I was thinking like, man, there are going to be days where I just don't want to people.
Yeah.
Get out there and that's how you make your money. Like,
and you're like put in this competition with like everybody else who's there to like, let's find the guys and see if I can get him to, go in the back with me. And I'm like this sort of introverted sex worker who like puts up an ad and then sits there and waits. Like, they can come to me. I'm just going to put some energy out and hopefully they come because I cannot do that.
And that's, like social media, trying to do all that promotion and stuff.
Yeah.
But get on your feet in heels, in person.
Girl, no.
Strippers, props to the dancers.
First of all, I'm not an athlete. Second of all, I'm not an extrovert. Third of all, I'm not a night person. So like, it's just no. Yeah. So yeah, anyways, yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but like you were saying that like there's reasons that we get into this work. And a lot of it seems to me like there's a huge overlap with neurodivergence and not fitting into conventional work environments that I don't think that I have always worked like in the gig economy, even before I was a sex worker, like in other ways as a freelance writer and as an adjunct instructor and like all these I ran my own business for a while that was not a sex work business. And I think back about all of that and I'm like, oh, I was doing that to avoid like a 9-to-5 job, which I would not have been successful at.
Yep. And for me, the last writing job I had killed my love of writing. I didn't write for years after. Mm-hmm. And there was sexual harassment in the office. And, after your entire life of dealing with that kind of stuff, I was just like, okay, well, wait a minute. I'm already doing this stuff in my personal life. Mm-hmm. People are getting paid a little bit more than a writer does.
Yeah.
Writers get paid. And I can take this sexual harassment that I'm experiencing that I'm told that I just need to swallow in the office and use which is also probably why I can't be a stripper, because then I got to be nice to men all the time. Being a dominatrix, being a humiliatrix is such a good fit for me. And I get to like pound them in the mats. It's so, it's definitely fit. Definitely fit.
Okay, yeah. So let's transition to that. So you do wrestling, and I want to know everything about wrestling. So I will first say that when I used to be a phone sex operator, because I was a phone sex operator for many years, I had one client who was like a repeat person who would call me, and he was really into wrestling. And we would, and this is the only experience I've had with this, we would every single time he would call me and he'd be like, okay, are you ready to fight? And then we would negotiate ahead of time who was going to win. Mm-hmm. And then we would like talk through the moves, and then I take you and I do this, and I didn't know anything about wrestling. So I was just like on the fly, like you were saying, creatively. I was like, oh, and then I do something I just made up off the top of my head. And it was really fun. I actually enjoyed it more than I thought I would, but I've never done it in person. So tell me about what it looks like.
I love wrestling. I started as sort of like, your classic dom in high heels and PVC, so I have that training behind me. But when I got into wrestling, it is the ultimate BDSM on a buck. Really is. Like, if you're entering sex work, I'm telling you, like,
is it kind of silly or is it serious?
It depends. There's so many different kinds of wrestling. There's submission wrestling. You can do tickle wrestling. You can do strip wrestling. Primal play goes into that. Mm-hmm. Pro wrestling. I love pro wrestling, the kayfabe of it, and just, that the bigness and the theatrics.
There's been to like pro wrestling events?
Not in person.
Oh, you need to.
Trying to go. Date idea, guys. Like,
yeah. You need to get like one of your subs to take you to one of those. And then you could like act it out afterward.
Oh, I love that. Like when you read erotica and then you like act it out. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. And in pro wrestling, I love playing the heel. Because there's a face and there's a heel, and the face is the hero. If you watch Glow,
I did watch Glow. Okay, but I didn't know those terms, or I don't remember them.
Liberty Bell is the face.
Okay,
and Soya the Destroyer is the heel. So it's the villain that gets to fight dirty, but everybody still kind of cheers for.
Okay,
so I'm definitely a natural heel. I love it. For submission wrestling, in 2019 when I started, I trained. A couple times a week.
As a wrestler?
As a wrestler. I this house, and instead of a dojo, and they would train us, and it was like a mix of submission wrestling, BJJ, and
what's BJJ?
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh, okay. All right. Uh-huh.
Yeah. But I'm going to be honest, like aside from a few competitive matches and a few competitive sessions, the majority of my sessions are fantasy wrestling, domination wrestling, and face sits and scissor holds.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Which is great because my favorite things to do are choking and smothering.
Yeah.
So fun. But being able to dominate someone, like I don't need high heels. I don't need certain outfits. I just have everything I need right on my body.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a dumb question. If you're a dom and they're coming to you for this, are you always supposed to win?
It depends. As a dom, when there's like, fantasy domination, yes, that's the fantasy that you overpower them. Have I been in competitive matches against women that I haven't won? Yes.
Okay.
And I have heard a story about subs being upset because, they saw their dom on the floor, or, they saw their dom being put in a hold. And it's like, we're still people that like to do fun things, and we like to challenge ourselves. Mm-hmm. If you can't handle beyond the fantasy, then don't go see her train or whatever.
Yeah. Right. Mm-hmm.
But it is, the fantasy is that you are stronger than them. And there's that aspect of female supremacy.
Right.
Yeah. And men are so used to, walking around with their privilege that they get put in their place in the mats. And that's
hot to them.
Hot to them. Just like being objectified. The stuff we deal with every day, they're like, no, give it to me.
Yeah. That's why there's, I think this is all like so complicated. Like the gender dynamics of it is all like so complicated because obviously like they have to feel like there's a subversion in that in order for it to be like hot. So I think that, and what I mean by that is like, unless they thought that they were superior in some way, it wouldn't be hot to invert it, And so I've found that, and I'm not a Dom at all. I'm a GFE provider, but I worked on Night Flirt for a long time and there's only subs on Night Flirt. So I pretended, I'm not a Dom, but I pretended to be one on the telephone. And there was a lot more, so much more like directing from them to me on exactly what I needed to do than I get with like more vanilla clients, and directing, but also this sort of like, you need to do this exactly the way that I want to do it. And I'm like, how are you submissive? And I'm curious what somebody who's like a full-time Dom like thinks about that or how you manage that.
When We're Not Hustling is powered by Black Venom Digital. Black Venom Digital is a collaboration between myself and industry veteran Mr. Black Venom. Black Venom Digital aims to provide adult professionals and entrepreneurs with professional-grade web design, graphic design, and branding services that will inspire growth and success. At Black Venom Digital, we empower companions, creators, and entertainers with professional web design and branding. If you're looking for a new website, or any other branding services and you work in the adult industry, please find out more at blackvenomdigital.com. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review us wherever you listen to your podcast. Doing so will help others find us. And if you're a sex worker who wants to come on the show and talk about your life outside of work, we would love to have you. Please send us an email with more information to nothustlingpod@proton.me.
I think that sort of experience, they're more fetishists than actual submissives. Submissives are like a little bit more rare, I think, than we imagine. Fetishists will tell you exactly like, this is what I need. This is
right
in this order. Some of them are pretty, give it to me creatively, but some really need that script.
Right.
So it's almost like the submission is the fetish along with whatever other aspect, feet, smothering, female supremacy.
Yeah.
More so than actually embodying that submission.
Yeah. Right. So it's like, and the difference between those things are like wanting to submit is different than wanting to get off on the idea of submission.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
So what percentage of your clients do you think are fetishists and what percentage of them do you think are submissives?
Oh, I probably have like 95, 90, let's say 90%.
Fetishists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's fun because, fetishes there's so many of them.
Yeah.
And the way that they work into wrestling is so fun. Like you can really combine so many things. That's why the wrestling and fetish party that I have, Surrender, that is always wrestling and something else.
So tell me about, what is that? What's the party that you throw?
So the party is, I've been doing it quarterly, but I'm switching it up a little bit and doing some different themes this year. But there's wrestling and ropes, wrestling and foot domination. We do one that's asphyxiation because it's all about booties and face sitting and smothering.
I have the right booty for that. I should do that.
Yes, you do. So it's a wrestling and fetish party where we have first there's like some kind of edutainment, right? Either like one time we did Katarina's Face Sit Orchestra, where we have like
I love this.
The subs or the bottoms are laying face up on the floor, and the tops or the doms are sitting on top of them in a face sit. And when the dom sits up, the sub sings a note. So
oh my gosh.
up and down. So it's never good. It's very fun.
But it sounds fantastic.
That's on any opera singers. It is very interesting, but it's very fun and very funny. So we did that one time, but I usually have a guest instructor come in and do a workshop on whatever fetish or kink that we're working into it. So there might be a workshop on breath play. The next one is March 21st, and we're going to try a new theme, which is wrestling and beatdowns. And Feisty Feminista is one of my friends, an incredible provider, wrestler person. And she is going to be teaching a workshop on beatdowns and how you can incorporate that into your wrestling.
So what does a beatdown look like?
A beatdown can be like boxing. It can be like genital punches. Belly punches are really popular. Just basically just pummeling somebody with your fists.
Okay.
So it's fun to incorporate that.
All of this sounds really fun. So what do you think? I want to like go back to the beginning of wrestling. What do you think that the fetish is with wrestling, and what do you think that your clients are coming to you for?
There is that aspect of letting go with submission, even, if it's a fetish or a true, trait. There is that aspect of letting go and just being controlled, being controlled and held when you're submitted.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that feeling that people ask for. They really ask for a lot of the female supremacy, physical domination, muscle worship is a big part of it. There are a lot of doms who are, in their fishnets taking like pretty pictures, and I'm like, I flex, look at my bicep. A lot of bicep flexing. A lot of it is just like that strength and beauty.
Yeah. Did you watch that Netflix documentary, Killer Sally?
I did. It was like a little history lesson on fetish wrestling.
It was so interesting. And the part that it was a little history lesson. And for those of you who haven't watched it, I suggest it. It's very interesting. And it's so like sweet at the end. I almost got like tears. Like, how did this like story turn into a love? Okay. But like
steroids, that's how.
So it's about a pro wrestler or a pro bodybuilder who was married to another pro bodybuilder, and she actually ended up killing him, but he was abusive and went to prison for it. But it tells her story about like what happened, and they were actually the first married like Mr. and Mrs. Muscle. I don't know. Whatever their titles were.
Bicep.
Yeah, I mean, but they were like really impressive bodybuilders, both of them. Yeah. And she, in order to make money on the side, because women weren't making that much money in pro wrestling, in pro bodybuilding, started doing wrestling, like what you were talking about. And what I loved about her is that you could tell that the documentarians were trying to like shame her for the sex work aspect of it, and was like, well, did you feel weird? Did you feel like these guys were weird? And she's like giving an interview from prison, and she's like, no. she's like, I was making money. I was wrestling dudes in hotel rooms and making money. And she wouldn't have it. She would not have any of the shame that they were trying to put down on her.
I love that. And yeah, that's the thing. Like, she wasn't earning, I mean, not that a male bodybuilder is going to earn that much, but they were earning boatloads more than the women in those competitions. And yeah, she had a supplement, and that's what it was, like that classic bed wrestling, that kind of thing. And what I did love about that too is when she said to the documentarians, like, no, these guys, I forget what she called them, but she had like sort of an affectionate term for it.
She did. I forgot what it was too, but it was really good. Yeah.
She was talked about like how they supported her when she was going through her trial, and how the connections she made really, made a difference in her life. And
yeah, you're right. I forgot about that part. It was really amazing because she was talking about like how hard things were as she was going through all these things in her life, and that her clients were the one, like, it was so lovely from a sex worker perspective. And she didn't heavily identify as a sex worker, but she was like, these clients are the ones that showed up. They're the ones that gave me money for my trial. They're the ones that supported me. They're the ones that stood by my side. And I think that I'm obviously not speaking for all sex workers, but a lot of sex workers can say that like clients have helped them through like hard times.
Yeah.
Or supported their projects or their art, or
there are clients who, come and go. Yeah. There are people who are, there for the transaction, but there are people who are there for the connection. And that is really, it's a, and especially like as a dom, it's like, oh man, two thumbs down. But really like the connections that I form outside of that role are beautiful. It's really lovely to be able to have that.
Yeah. I thought that was a really interesting, like, pop culture, like, look into erotic wrestling like that.
Yes. Another documentary, and it's not about sex.
And one I totally didn't expect. Like, I was just watching it as like a true crime story, and then I was like, wait, what?
Yes, I know. That came out of nowhere. And like, what was it, the VHS tapes that they would mail out? Beginning of content creation. Like,
she was like a businesswoman, and she was like, she was like, bodybuilding's expensive.
It is. She needed, yes. And that was a great way for her to supplement that. And she did really well.
Yeah.
How can you shame somebody for something they do really well?
Well, yeah. And she had all kinds of like she did custom videos too before that was like a thing on mini-vids and things like that. That was so interesting to hear her like, oh yeah, this guy had this fantasy. So yeah, of course I like did this and sent him a tape of it. Why would I not do that?
Yes. Yeah. I love that. Just unabashedly exploring those experiences with them on a VHS.
Yeah. So, to the people who came before us. Yeah.
Yes.
But so you were going to say there was another one.
Oh, it's not about sex work specifically, but it's a series called Dark Side of the Ring.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
And they talk about different pro wrestlers and what they went through, because, we see pro wrestlers on TV. And again, it's these characters, it's this marketing, the kayfabe, they bring it out of the ring and onto the interviews.
Yeah.
And, in the meantime, they're waiting tables or, struggling to, put food on the table for their family, or they're going through, steroid abuse, drug addiction, that kind of stuff, because of the impact that they're, putting on their bodies.
Yeah.
Because it might be fake wrestling, but it's still extremely athletic.
Oh,
extremely agile. And
it doesn't matter if it's like rigged. If you're getting slammed down, like you're getting slammed down.
They are legit getting slammed down. And in some of those matches, like they take out like razor blades and like some of those matches got bonkers.
Yeah.
And those people were really putting their bodies on the line for peanuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Which is a story of a lot of professional athletics. If you're not like in the NFL or something, which there's a whole other side to that's also abusive. But like so many athletes and people who are like trying to build these careers are doing so under really difficult conditions.
Yeah. And it is, it's an intersection of two of the least well-paid industries is artistry and athletics.
That's true. Yeah. It's performance sport.
Yes, performance sport. Yes.
Yeah. So what was your first wrestling experience like?
My first wrestling experience, I went to a friend's wrestling party. This was 2018,
okay.
Somewhere around there. I think I was already, I think it might have been 2018. And I went to this wrestling party, and very non-dominant. I got tossed around. I was just like, wee, the whole time. It was so much fun. And I was like, I need to do this again.
Mhm.
So I came back. I had no idea how to wrestle. I had such a good time wrestling people. And then a production company from around here was like, hey, do you want to film with us? And my first match was not good for me. I did not know anything. I did not know how to frame up and protect myself. My arms were over my head, like flopping all over the place. And of course I got, beat. The score was pretty high on her end, round on my end, but she was great. They were great, and we had a really fun match. And I got up after just losing horribly, and I was so excited, this big smile on my face, and I just thought, I need to do this again. Like, this needs to happen again. And I started doing videos because I was face in before that.
Okay.
I started videos and I started training, and I had a really good time.
Nice. Yeah. So what is this like the majority of your business now?
Yes, it is. I'm a classically trained dominatrix. I do all the things. I teach workshops on BDSM 101, wax play. I do electroplay, I do all sorts of different things. But every time I'm like, hey guys, you want to do something else? They're like, you want to wrestle? It's always wrestling.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, a lot of my, I would say about, again, 95% of my sessions are wrestling or have some kind of wrestling aspect, and the other ones still involve physical domination.
Okay.
If it's not wrestling specifically.
Yeah. The person who wrote the theme song for this show is also married to the producer of this show, and he used to be a wrestler.
Get out!
Yeah, he was a wrestler in Western PA and was known as El Tiburon, the shark.
Ooh, El Tiburon! That's a good name. That's a good name.
Yeah. And I have to say that, like, my partner also I never did it at that level, but like in high school, loved wrestling and would have like matches in the backyard. And I knew nothing about wrestling. And so it's so interesting that this is.
Yeah, there are so many different kinds of wrestlings. Like in high school, they probably did a lot of pins wrestling.
I don't even know. I don't even know what that means. What does that mean?
It's the kind of wrestling that they do for competitions in high school, and it's getting the person's shoulders to the mat.
Okay. No, they did it in the backyard. They were not like on the wrestling team.
They were not on the wrestling team.
Although I did date a wrestler in high school, like when I was in high school, and it was really funny because he was on the real wrestling team, and he was also into like bodybuilding and stuff. He was like on the bigger side, like muscly side of things. And I remember one time, and this is when I was like, I don't think this relationship's going to work out. I haven't thought about this in a million years, but he goes so he's very, like a lot of wrestlers, very like body focused because they have to weigh in, and there's like all these stipulations on what they eat and what they do. And so, and he was like a bigger dude. And so he was always like trying to get the calorie counts up and whatever. So he came over to my house one time and he met my dad for the first time. And my dad was in shorts, and my dad is a short, stocky, like Italian dude because that's who we are. And he looked at my dad and he was like, man, how did your dad get those calves? They're great. And I was like, oh my God. This probably has nothing to do with his wrestling, but I just remember thinking like, what? He's like coveting my father's calves. And I was like, okay.
The emphasis on body is really heavy. And I have to say, like, especially growing up under white supremacy in this phobic society that we have, it's daunting / refreshing to have people who get disappointed when I lose weight. You know, they want, you know, it's kind of like fetish. You can take something that you hate about yourself and somebody's going to want to put it in their mouth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That was the thing that I experienced just coming into the sex industry. Like there's somebody who likes everything and not just likes it, but is like, oh my God, that's the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yes. Yes. That's what I love. I mean, I was a dancer, so, you know, I had toe shoe feet. I had, you know, not pretty feet at all. And now I just
did point.
I did do point.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I did ballet, tap, and jazz.
Okay.
And yeah, we were not allowed, like, you did not get pedicures. You did not have soft feet. You stuck your feet out of the tub. You had blisters. And I just did a virtual session where it was, you know, he just wanted to look at my feet. And I was like, yeah, they are, aren't they?
They're like, those are some feet that have seen things.
They have seen things. Yes, they are working feet.
I had a guy, again, on Night Flirt, because most of my fetish people came from when I did online stuff. Although I still get a little bit of that now, but I mostly have more GFE sort of stuff now. But I had a guy on Night Flirt who he was a foot fetishist, and he loved the idea of me walking around barefoot, but he wanted like my heels to be cracked, you know, like.
Oh.
And he would want to know. He would want to know how dirty my floor was. Like I'm walking around and you know, and obviously this is all like virtual. So we're just like talking on the phone and I would be like, yeah, and there's just dust bunnies everywhere. I'm just stepping on those dust bunnies. And you know, what are we talking about? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a terrible housekeeper.
I was just like, this is so funny, but like worth doing because it's just entertainment for me too. And I'm like, oh, my house is so dirty. My feet are so dirty. Do you want to lick these dirty feet? They're so dirty.
I love that.
They're dry and they're cracked and they're terrible.
The cracks. Like I haven't had a pedicure in 5 years. Fetish. I love it. Yeah. I love it. One of my first foot fetish sessions was dirty feet, and I got to go into like the corner of the dungeon and like really grind my feet in the corner because you know those dungeons they're not dark. So you're really getting your feet in there, and like he was licking it, and I was like, "Yes, your immune system must be amazing." Let me contribute to your health. So good.
You're like, would you like to lick the floor too? We could all
the floor for me, little firm.
So it's fun. This industry can be so fun.
I love it. I love it. I'm imagining you just sitting there.
I'm like in a house that's relatively put together, and I'm like, yeah, it's just
together. Yeah,
terrible. It's so bad.
I know. Like the opposite of the trad wife fantasy. Like you have that.
Yeah. I'm like, there's just like everything is a mess, and you should see my kitchen. Like things are just spilling out of the sink. Like dirty talk it was dirty talk.
It was dirty talk. It was hygienic talk.
I haven't thought about that in so long. It was so funny though. There's so many funny things. So tell me about a wrestling session that would be like a typical one, and then maybe one that stands out to you as really fun.
A typical one, which is actually one of my favorites, would just be like face sitting and scissor holds. Mm-hmm. So I might do like a snap down to like kind of start like a wrestling match, but as soon as I get them on the mat, sometimes they're just like, no, dominate me. Yeah. So I really like playing with, you know, it's kind of a dance, like improv dance. I always the dancer Isadora Duncan. She was an improv dancer. Okay. And she would never do the same routine twice. Somebody asked her, she would get so offended. It was all improv. And that's kind of how I feel about sessions is it's this performance for one, and it's this capsule of just the two of us. And this will never be recreated. I could do the same face sit moves. I could do the same type of scissor holds. Yeah. It will never be the same. So
I love that. I think that's a good description of almost any kind of sex work session. Like that's one of the things that I think is so great about the work is that you have this like moment in time that you just both step into that you're like, we're going to do something.
Yes.
Who knows how it's going to go.
I do a lot of trash talk. I'm very verbal, and I do a lot of trash talk. So it's fun to just ping off of that person and ping off their energy and just kind of do like an improv. But that's how you're right. Like a lot of the scenes are and a lot of the sessions are. For me, BDSM, like I'm big on consent and negotiations. That we talk about before each party. I talk about it in every workshop I teach. And what I love is creating a box. You know, we do our negotiations and we create this box and we talk about safe words and we pad the walls. And where the walls are, we can go completely bonkers inside of that box.
Yeah, I love that.
That ability to just let go because you know where the padding is.
Right. That's such a great way to say it. Yeah. And there is something, even if you're not doing wrestling, just about BDSM in general that's so theatrical.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. It's a fantasy world. And like, you know, Katarina's not a character, but there is that, you know, when you step into a session, there is that fantasy, there is that energy. It's very fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think about that because I very much play myself at work, but I've said before, and this is how I always feel about it, I play like the best version of myself. And there's and that doesn't feel fake. That feels good. It's like, this is my ideal self and this is like me at my best. And I get to like get in the headspace to be me at my most charming, most attentive, most like, interested, most erotically charged, all of those things. And that's fun for me too, to get to like play that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing. Katarina is just me turned up to 11.
Yeah.
Which is really fun also too, because, you know, when you work in an office, you don't get to have that range. You kind of have to subdue yourself. And as someone who has been undiagnosed ADHD or whatever, whatever's going on, I've often been told I'm intense and a little much, I'm extroverted and I feed off the energy of other people and I just kind of get bigger. Somebody I dated once likened me to a boner. He was like, the more you come into contact with, the bigger you get. Just the bigger you get.
That's so funny.
But having permission to be a big raging boner is really, it's freeing. It's really freeing and it's a lot of fun. I have implemented a rule after sessions, especially like a physical session or a trash talking session. I don't like give interviews. I don't make decisions. I don't buy things. I treat it like I am up.
Yeah.
I am up there. So I really like allow myself to come down.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you try to not do sessions like back to back?
I try not to. I mean, logistically, it really works out, but it depends on the energy of a session.
Yeah.
For example, I'm teaching a 2-hour wrestling workshop for a local dungeon here. And then I teach a wax play workshop and the energy is incredibly different.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you have that kind, plus, you give your all in a session.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of, I'm that extrovert who then gets really tired. I need that come down. So I do like to space them out so that I am fully charged and fully recharged.
Yeah, that makes sense. I am not an extrovert, but but I'm very good in one-on-one. Like I have a lot of energy for one-on-one interactions and I consider myself like not an extrovert because as soon as there's like more than a few people, I'm like, okay, I got to just like shrink. I get overwhelmed. But I think that I feel that because I often too, like I tour a lot for work. And when I tour, which is how I was in New York when I saw you, because I tour up in New York a lot. But when I tour, I often have like these good intentions of like, I'm going to see my friends in this city and I'm going to do stuff like that. And then I find that I really need a lot of space in between sessions to like just regroup and be by myself and spend some time alone. And then I do better. I do better. I can give more to my clients and I can be happier to be there and to be in it. But I too need to like come down off of that and spend some time alone and recharge. And then I can go back into it.
Yeah. And especially when you're touring, because you have limited time. So you are seeing multiple people in the day, and you want to give each of those people your all. So you do need that time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I definitely feel that. I have that extrovert, energy feeding off of other people, but then I definitely need that alone time to recharge.
Yeah. And I think that's just a matter of like self-care, I think, and knowing yourself and knowing what you're capable of, and then pulling back and being like, okay, if I'm going to do this again, which you are, obviously, I need to figure out what I need before I can go into that again.
Yep. And I have to say, I don't know if it's, just where I am in life, this job, but I'm finally starting to listen to my body a little bit more. Like, you know what? I don't have to close the bar down. I can go home. I know if I don't, I'm going to need to be a hermit for the next 3 days.
Right.
So kind of, really listening to myself.
I've never closed a bar down in my life, but yeah.
I'm a natural night owl. This is my yeah. I have always been the late night person. My bedtime's about 5, 6 a.m.
Yeah. My partner is like that naturally and gets bummed out when they have to be on like a schedule where they have to get up every day. Is not good at that. And I'm just the opposite. Like I need to get up and moving. And around 6 o'clock, if I haven't done something, that with the exception of sessions, I can go see a client. That's fine. Okay. But if I have to do something that's like intellectual, like write an article or do, it's not happening. Like my brain shuts off. It's time to watch TV and look at a magazine, stare at the wall. I'm no longer productive.
I'm a big fan of wall staring. I'm just going to say it. 2 thumbs up, says Glenever. I love wall staring.
Yeah, like if it's not done at 5, tomorrow's another day.
Walls to look at.
Yeah. Well, it has been like a pleasure to talk to you about this. Is there? I was going to ask if there's like something, but I think we've covered everything that like.
Oh, undiagnosed ADHD. I think I didn't answer the most fun session.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Let's go back to, I also, same. Yeah. So what is the most fun session that you've had?
That would be between, I think, 2 different ones. One was a role play. I had a client who would come up with these role play scenarios, and it was because I would play like a reporter, an investigative reporter, and he would try things that he's never tried before. Like he tried rope for the first time. He tried electric for the first time, and it was really great to see him explore and like how he got when he discovered something else he really loved. And I love role play. I think it's a lot of fun.
I think role play is fun too. I also like it.
Yeah, it brings me back to my high school theater days, So many
people in this industry who are like theater nerds.
Yes.
I was a band nerd. I wasn't in theater, but I did band.
Yeah. I was theater and dance. You're looking at a state champion for speech and debate, dramatic interpretation here. You are welcome.
I am not surprised by that.
But the other session is a pro style session. And we did it like, announcing, coming into the ring, had different falls. It was so fun. We were kind of at the end of our time, and I was like, let's do one more.
That's fun.
It was very fun.
Yeah. Okay. We like to end every show with 3 questions. My first question is, what are you reading?
I am in between books. I just finished Wake, The Hidden History of Women-Led Slave Revolts.
Oh, interesting. Was it good?
Yeah, it's by, I want to say Rebecca Hall is her name. She did her doctorate on, it goes through all the research that she did in America, in the UK, if we still call it that. It's so good. And it's a graphic novel, which is really interesting.
Wow.
for this kind of subject matter. And I'm about to start a book that's like, I think it's called The Mind-Body Balance.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not really like I have a third eye kind of gal.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. We'll see. But maybe I need to be a little more into the mind-body balance. Maybe they'll help me with life balance.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm not either, and I want to be, but I'm like not as woo as I would like to be. Like I'm very rational and I'm very in my head, and I'm like, I need to get out of that and figure out how to like do something else. But it's actually one of the reasons that I feel like I enjoy sex so much, because it's like the one thing that like pulls me out of my head. Mm-hmm. But yeah, because it's hard to get me out. I get stuck. What are you listening to? Music or podcasts?
Rabia Chaudhry tells me a bedtime story every night before I go to bed. I listen to any podcast that she's on.
Wait, who's this?
Rabia Chaudhry. She did. She worked on Serial. She's an attorney, but she does this one called The Midnight Hour. It used to be called Nighty Night, and they're bedtime stories.
Wow.
She did The Hidden Djinn, which is like all genie folklore, and
How fun.
I will listen to her read a menu. That's definitely a podcast. But I'm more of a music person, so I make playlists and listen to them, and I kind of wake up every day with a song in my head, and that kind of dictates what I'm listening to. And Mark Anthony salsa right now, and I'm on a
cool
vivir kind of playlist kick. So yeah.
And what are you excited about?
I am excited about this year and my intentions. We were a little bit removed slightly from New Year's, and I have not really done it the way but I feel like, a friend of mine called it Nora Quinn called it them intentions instead of resolutions. I
like that.
Resolutions.
Yeah.
So my intention is to get back to having hobbies, getting back to, doing things that I love. And having that work-life balance so that I do have things to do when I'm not hustling.
That's always an intention of mine. And then I seem to turn all those things into a hustle. So I don't.
All those things. I know.
But yeah, it's a good intention. Yeah. So where can people find you?
I have my website is thedommekat.com, TheDommmekat. I'm the Domme Kat on Blue Sky. Domina_Katarina on Instagram. I have loyal fans, Sex Panther, many vids, clips for sale. Name it, I got it. I got the night flirt.
Speaking of hustling.
I have such platform burnout. But yeah, I am pretty much everywhere. But even my link tree, TheDommmekat is my link tree, and all my links are on that.
Great. Thank you. It was such a pleasure to talk to you.
It was so great talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, very, very fun.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of When We're Not Hustling. I'm your host, Jessie Sage. You can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at sapiotextual, or visit my website at jessiesage.com. You can follow the show on all socials at Not Hustling Pod, and visit our website for more information at nothustling.com. The show was produced by Emily Foster. The music is by Benjamin J. Benamati. Signing off. Have a great week.